Hi there, and welcome to the HFS Career Podcast. My name is Dr. Lori Bullock, and I'm an assistant professor in human development and family studies at MSU. I teach several courses in the department, and one of them is HDFS 270, which introduces students to this major and to the field of family science. Quite often, students who are new to our major are not quite sure of the career options they have with a degree in human development and family studies. Some students know exactly what they want to do, and some students aren't quite sure and can sometimes feel overwhelmed. And there are other students who are in our major but plan to pursue a career in the healthcare field. These would be students who know that they want to be nurses or doctors or child life specialists, occupational therapists, and so on. The purpose of this podcast is to bring professionals on from many different areas. Each episode, I invite a professional from the community who has a background in HDFS or one that is similar to HDFS. I'm so excited you joined the podcast, and I hope today's episode will be helpful to you as you consider your career options. Hello, HDFS students and colleagues. I'm really excited about today's guest. She is Dr. Stephanie Brewer, and she is the Academic Programs Manager for the Center for Community Engaged Learning. And she is also the Program Director for the Community Engagement Scholars Program here at MSU. A little bit more about her. Dr. Brewer works with a team responsible for developing, supporting, and advancing academic community engaged learning at MSU. She supports faculty, students, and community partners in the creation and facilitation of these opportunities. Dr. Brewer holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Central Michigan University, a Master of Science in Marriage and Family Therapy from Purdue University, and a PhD in Higher Adult and Lifelong Learning here at MSU. Stephanie has worked for 10 years in the field of community development and mental health before making her way to the field of higher education. Prior to her work with the Center for Community Engaged Learning, she was with the Broad College of Business at MSU and previously served as coordinator of the University Fellows Experience with the Honors College at the University of Alabama. Throughout her career, she has focused on supporting individuals and communities while serving as an advocate for meaningful and social change. Dr. Brewer, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I'm so excited for you to be here and for my students to learn from your career experiences.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Great, wonderful. So to start in with the questions, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that intro. I was like, oh, Lori could answer this question, I think, at this point. Yeah, a little bit about myself. Professionally, I've kind of had these two paths, which I think we'll talk about a little bit in a later question, but worked in the mental health field for about a decade and then have been over in higher education now for also about a decade. And so lots of interesting ways that those two worlds have kind of interacted with each other over the course of my career. In my current position with the Center for Community Engaged Learning, I do a lot of work with faculty support. So those course experiences, those classroom experiences where community engagement is integrated. I work in a lot of those areas to support the faculty who are planning and facilitating those experiences. I work with the community partner organizations who are part of those experiences. And then in some instances, that work also includes working directly with the student participants in those courses as well through workshops and different reflection opportunities. So lots of stuff going on in that position. And then, as you said as well, I'm also the program director for the Community Engagement Scholars, which is a small program located within our center. We have about 10 students a year who participate in the program. It is an acceptance kind of process. And then those students also work over the course of the entire academic year with community partner organizations in a little bit more of an intense partnership in terms of time and commitment. And so I work with them and help develop and implement the curriculum with those students as well. So it's good times.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. I hadn't, I've seen things about the Community Engaged
Yeah,
Scholars program come through, emails and things like that. And so it's nice to get a little bit of a context on what that's
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Great. So, and it sounds like you have a very busy work life, very full.
It certainly
Um,
can be, yes.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you have like a typical day or week, but can you talk to us about like a little bit of what you do on a day-to-day
For
basis?
sure. What does that look like? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So I think that's my favorite part about this work is that there is no 2 days in a row that look the same, which is actually really lovely. And sometimes not even weeks in a row that look the same. But there are pieces to this work that are, could be considered like a typical work experience. So a lot of the work that I do does kind of fall into those buckets of the other human beings that I'm working with at that time. So whether it's faculty, we can be doing a colleague and I do a professional development workshop series where we're essentially teaching the teachers, right? Here's the best practices in this field. Here's the tools and resources available to you for this work. And sometimes our work is actually creating those tools and resources as well. So that's sometimes part of my day. Sometimes I'm having conversations with community partner organizations around what are their goals? How can our center and our Michigan State students help support those goals and their mission, those sorts of things. And then sometimes, we've got, for example, tonight I have a meeting with the student scholars. And so we'll spend 2 hours. We're actually talking tonight about critical community engaged learning and what that is and how that applies to the work that they're doing with their community organizations this year. So each day kind of has these different pieces, lots of teaching, lots of engaging with other interesting human beings, and also a lot of time off campus where we're working with community partners directly. So never the same day, 2 days in a row, which is lovely.
yeah, yeah. And my impression is some of it ebbs and flows. Like my experience from working with you at the beginning of the
Yes.
semester, definitely it's got to be crazy busy for you.
Yeah, one of those things that you get when working with higher education is you're on the semester calendar. And yeah, so beginnings and ends of semesters are a lot. And sometimes that gets into that very kind of logistically detail heavy work. Whereas in the middle of the semester, sometimes you get to back up a little bit and think more big picture and get into some of the planning as opposed to implementation. So always something new.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that too. And
Yeah.
um and it sounds like also I would imagine one of the perks is that with your work with community partners, you kind of learn what's out there in terms of
Mhm.
some organizations that could use volunteers, and quite often they're nonprofits and things like that that serve clients in some way.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. It kind of, I like to say that it helps to keep me grounded when we're here in a higher ed institution, and especially one like Michigan State that is so large. It can really be all encompassing to your time and to your priority setting and, the work that you're doing. And I find it to be very helpful to have this opportunity to step outside of the campus, both literal and figurative boundaries, and spend some time with the people who are in our local communities and in these organizations, working towards their own missions. And it helps provide some perspective to the work for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine that. It's such a critical part of MSU meeting the needs of the community. And so that makes your role and the Center for Community Engaged Learning such a key component of that. So
Sure, for sure.
it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so my next question is,
Mhm.
what made you choose the career path that you followed? You started out in mental health and now you're in
Yes.
community engagement. And so can you talk a little bit about that, about how you made
For
that switch,
sure.
or how you got there.
Yeah, how that whole crazy trail evolved. Yeah, for sure. So I think as an undergraduate student, psychology and a people-oriented field was really important to me. I actually entered undergrad thinking I was going to be a chemist. I was very into chemistry, and that was going to be my path forward. And not that a chemistry career path was not going to be people focused, but there was just a piece of that was not fulfilling all of the things that I needed it to be. And so I made the shift actually as an undergrad into psychology and saw that as a path forward to do. I really wanted to be involved in a people focused field and profession. That is what I felt called to do. So did my undergraduate degree, did my master's degree, and started as a therapist. I worked in Southern California for a while, working in a community mental health center, doing therapy, individual and family therapy with families who were facing homelessness and those sorts of things. I later moved to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, actually, and worked for a nonprofit organization there in town, also doing therapy work, but also moving into, I ran a few different grant programs focused on community development, worked with the local school systems, partnered with them on various programming. And I also worked actually in a hospital setting, a psychiatric hospital setting, as a patient advocate and administrator. And so had this whole kind of depth of experience in the field of mental health, and found that a lot of the individual human beings that were part of those experiences with me, even through taking action to improve their own individual mental health, even through things like family therapy, there were still these larger kind of systemic issue areas that were impacting them on a daily basis that made it very difficult to make the movement that they were looking for, I guess is the best way to say that. And so I started to feel this sense of gosh, I guess just frustration would be the best way to describe that. Looking for a way to not only assist and support and move these folks forward through, mental health services, but also looking for ways to begin to engage with those larger systemic issues, right? And so that's really what motivated my movement into the field of higher education. I was working with students at the University of Alabama, actually, who were coming into my programs in the community. And I thought, what a lovely way to kind of think about this work differently, maybe find a different inroad to making some of these impacts that I was looking for. I started teaching a class for the Honors College. That's kind of how I started that process. And it just evolved into a position with the college that focused on, it was an interdisciplinary minor program, so students from all different major areas, but their kind of shared goal was to use those major areas and those eventual professional positions to make an impact on these larger systemic issues and social structures and those sorts of things. And I thought, oh, this is it. This is where I feel drawn. This is what is really going to kind of fill all of those buckets for me. And so I've remained obviously in that work of community engagement. And so instead of just this minor program, which was amazing, I'm now here at Michigan State where we get to support this work for the entire campus. So it's provided an opportunity for me to still do that people-focused work, but at a different scale than the one-on-one kind of therapy setting where I started out. So still original mission, it just looks a little bit different the way I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's such an interesting progression too. You know, identifying that the need that individuals and families have, and that there's something, like you said, systemic that's larger than them that is
Right.
impacting their ability to move forward. And so you identifying that and wanting to do something about that,
Yeah.
it's like, to get my geek on, ecological perspective, it's kind of like a mesosystem, exosystem type of work that you're doing that hopefully
Absolutely.
has an
Yeah.
impact
Yeah.
at the
And
end of the
I
day.
mean, if we're sharing these geeked out feelings, right? I think that working with students is a ever present source of energy and inspiration for me as well. Some of us, I won't say how old we are, but we've been around for a minute. And so we get a little tired and jaded and frustrated and all of those things. And so working with students in this kind of subject area can be really inspirational and provide for some really great innovative thought around, right? What is our mission? What type of social change strategy might we be thinking about in terms of this movement? Um, it's really, it's fantastic. I wouldn't trade it. Students are phenomenal. They're really great.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds rewarding, and they can have such creative ideas, when they're feeling really engaged and inspired to
Absolutely.
want to help in the community too. So,
Absolutely.
and I see that in so many of our students.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. Um, so my next question is, what advice do you have for students who might be interested in pursuing a career, either in mental health or in community engagement? You've kind of got the two
Yeah.
major things, and I don't know if you want to address both
Yeah.
or one or
Yeah.
the other.
That's such a good question. And it's always, I feel it's a little daunting to answer these types of questions, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, I can speak to my experience and hopefully that is helpful and relevant. But of course, hopefully everyone knows this has just been my experience. So I'll throw this out there. Yeah, what is my advice? I think I always think about this as a balance between having some clear goals and kind of your 3 to 5 year plan, as I used to call it. Like, this is where I think I am moving, and I'm making choices that will help move me in that direction. While at the same time, keeping yourself open to some of those goals potentially changing or evolving as you learn more, as you have more experiences, as you meet different people and other professionals, right? Move yourself in a direction, but know that that direction might shift over time. I certainly did not start out thinking that I would be over here in the community engagement side of things, and it's been a gift. So I think that would be one of my pieces of advice. And then I would also say, and this was something that I wasn't super great at as an undergrad because I am an introvert and I like to think things through a lot before connecting with other people. But I would say connect with other people, right? So seek out information, have conversations with people who are in the fields that you think you are interested in moving into. And those don't have to be scary and super planned out. They can be just, hey, would you mind having a conversation with me about how you came to be in this role? Very similar to what we're talking about right now, I think that is very helpful in kind of mapping out potential options moving forward, can open up some potential experiences, right? Hey, have you considered this? I know this place is looking for folks. So have those conversations and then seek out ways to get your hands into it, basically, right? So whether it's little plug, whether it's through a community engaged learning experience or through an internship or through one-time like volunteer experience, literally get yourself out and engage in that area. You can learn that this is amazing and this is definitely what I want to do, and look at these connections that I've made. And honestly, sometimes you can have the experience of like, ooh, I don't actually think this is for me. And that can be just as healthy and rewarding of an experience as the other direction. So I think that would be my main advice is have some goals, be open to flexibility, and then seek out relationships and experiences in those areas.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I hope you don't mind if I asked, it's not on the list of questions but just kind of related to the mental health area,
Yeah.
because you went from an undergrad in psychology, which makes
Mhm.
sense for going into being a therapist,
Yeah.
um, to make the connection or to in your transition from undergraduate to your master's in marriage and family therapy, were there
Yeah.
experiences along the way that helped you, um, like, being accepted in grad school, but also, were there experiences that helped you to know that that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, so yes, I'm the first human in my family to go on to any sort of graduate school, almost the very first person to do undergrad. And so this was a steep learning curve for me. And I will say my undergraduate institution was very helpful. There were a lot of educational workshops and like student sessions. Hey, just come and talk. Like, hey, this is what grad school is. If you think this is something of interest to you, here's kind of the steps to make that happen. I did go to a smaller institution than Michigan State, so slightly different experience. But similar to my answer to this last question, I think seeking out that information and being proactive and intentional, if that is the path that you're interested in, there are resources on this campus and folks who want to talk to you about that. You can start with your academic advisor and see where that goes. But there's also established programming that could be very helpful. There's undergraduate research, right? There is the Career Center who can help with internships and those sorts of things. There are, even if you're like, I don't think this is directly related, education abroad experiences, community engaged learning experiences. So getting yourself out and into some of these beyond the classroom sorts of opportunities can really be helpful, not only for you to clarify, is this the path for me? Which program am I interested in pursuing post undergrad? It can also be helpful for your actual applications as well, right? So, hey, here's what I've done in my undergrad, and I've reflected on that, and here's how I am now telling my story in my grad school applications about what this meant for me and how this has shaped the goals for your overall career path. So again, I think just getting out there, having conversations and getting engaged is really helpful.
Yeah, that's a really helpful information, really good
Yeah.
information. So hopefully will help the students who will listen to this this episode.
Cross our fingers.
Yeah. So my next question is about networking and things like that. And I know that like within your work, you network with the community organizations and faculty and students, but are there other organizations that do similar things to what the Center for Community Engaged Learning does that you also network with?
Yes. In fact, you have caught me here right between two of them. I just got back from a conference last week and I am going tomorrow to another one. So, yes, we have a variety of professional networks that are related to our field of community engagement. Last week, I spent the week in New Orleans, which was lovely. It was warm. It was gorgeous. The conference was the International Association for Research on Service Learning and Community Engagement. And it's a phenomenal opportunity to meet and spend time with and build relationships with those folks who are all over, in this particular instance, the world, doing similar types of work, right? So you come together, you share stories and presentations and research around what you're doing, get feedback, compare notes. It's really incredibly helpful to make sure that the kind of the work that you're doing is on the right path and you're not off in left field while the rest of the world is doing this work differently. And actually, like I said, tomorrow we're going to, a colleague and I are off to another conference in Canada. We're going to London, Canada. It's a shorter one, but a similar experience. And in fact, the whole conference is focused on mental health and wellness in the community engagement field. So I think that, yes, seeking out your professional organizations, and feeling out which ones are right for you. There's almost personalities to some of these different professional organizations, and going and trying some out and being like, yes, I think this is the group for me that's most in line with the work that I do or that I want to be doing. And then really dedicating some time to, join a committee or ask to volunteer at the next conference, or finding some way that you can spend some time in community with those people can be really, again, generative and inspiring, and just fun to meet other people doing similar work to what you're doing. So, yes, that's what I would recommend.
All right, great. Yeah, great information, because those conferences can be such tremendous ways to, like you said, learn what other people are doing and learn from them.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
And a lot of times, Lori, I don't know if grad students are watching this as well. A lot of times, those conferences, if you're a graduate student, you can volunteer at those conferences. And a lot of times that waives your registration fee, or at the very least reduces that registration fee. So I always recommend folks check that out as well.
Awesome. Yeah, really great information.
Yeah.
Good deal. All right. And so my last question to you is it okay if students contact you if they have questions about the work that you've done and how to do more?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Check out our website. We are ccel.msu.edu to learn more about our center and the work that we do. We have both academic focus, so in the classroom experiences, but we also have a ton of beyond the classroom stuff. So if you're like, I want to do this, how do I do more? And then, as always, email sbrewer@msu.edu. I would be so happy to connect with anybody who's interested. Oh, Lori, I think you're muted.
Yep. I had a tickle in my throat, so I muted myself. All right. Thank you for that information, the website and your email. And I'll also include that in the description of the episode too.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing your time with us and giving some great information about the work that you do.
Thanks, Lori. This was fun.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining today's episode of the HGFS Career Podcast. I hope you enjoyed meeting Dr. Stephanie Brewer and learning about the work that she has had and her interesting career path, that change or that transition from the mental health area and being a marriage and family therapist to community engagement, and how actually there's a really strong connection between the two, and how she got involved into community engagement because of the work that she did as a therapist. If you would like to contact Dr. Brewer about her work, either career path that she has had, she would be happy to answer your questions. Her email address is in the episode description, and the link to the website for the Center for Community Engaged Learning is also there if you would like to check out some of the opportunities that they have available for you. Please join me again soon as I interview more professionals that will give you an idea of the different things that you can do with your degree in HDFS. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.